A black screen. A single pill bottle drops into frame, the clack echoing. No face, only a voice. Calm, measured, and a little cold. Imagine reaching into your medicine cabinet for a small comfort, an ordinary, trusted relief, and watching it take a life. That's where this story begins. The ordinary night. It was late 1982, the kind of autumn that felt like every American suburb you've ever seen. Picket fences, school buses, TVs tuned to the evening news. People went to bed with the same tiny rituals: a glass of water, a bottle of pills for a headache or a fever. No one suspected a quiet, annihilating terror had slipped between the labels and the cap. Then the call started. Panic in the Midwest. 7 people. 7 ordinary mornings that became tragedies. They didn't die in the same house or even the same town, but they all used the same thing: extra-strength Tylenol capsules. The word cyanide, a name that sounded like something from a science fiction thriller, would be said on newscasts and then whispered in kitchens across the nation. Cut to archival footage. Frantic parents, hurried newscasters, store shelves suddenly bare. The public's trust cracked. People stopped buying medicines they had trusted for years. But the facts weren't straightforward. How do you poison a product millions of people touch? Where did the tampering happen? In a factory, at a distribution center, on a store shelf? Each theory split into a dozen others, and every answer raised new questions. The letter that changed everything. As panic spread, a sinister twist arrived in the mail. A letter, a demand. $1 million in exchange for stopping the killings. It was a chilling escalation. This was no longer just anonymous violence. Someone wanted payment for their silence. Enter James William Lewis. He was arrested after writing that letter. He claimed responsibility in correspondence and used the letter to extort the manufacturer. He was convicted for extortion, not for murder, and that conviction later gave the public someone to point at. But there's a crucial distinction. Guilty of threatening the nation's safety, yes. Guilty of the killings themselves? The courts never tied him conclusively to the poisonings. The extortion letter was both revelation and red herring. It offered a suspect and a motive, but it did not close the case. In the vacuum, theories multiplied like fingerprints on a bottle. The investigation that looked like a whodunit. Every angle was frenziedly chased. Investigators tested bottles, retraced distribution chains, and scoured security footage from a time before CCTV was everywhere. They interviewed store clerks, factory workers, and everyone who had handled the product. The nation watched as detectives hunted a phantom. Twist. Forensic science at the time could confirm cyanide in the capsules and link poisoning to the product, but it could not necessarily say where or by whom the tampering occurred. The trail often led to closed doors and unanswered questions. A small piece of evidence one day would mean a lead. The next, it would be a dead end. The copycats and the confounders. Weeks and months brought more scares. Reports of suspicious pills, prank calls, hoaxes, some dangerously real, some false alarms. The terrifying thing about this kind of crime is how it spawns mimicry. When you introduce the idea that something benign can turn lethal, some people test the edges of that knowledge. Was it a lone, disturbed individual? An opportunistic criminal aiming to cash in? A deranged attempt to terrorize? Or something else entirely? Each new hypothesis felt plausible and implausible at once. Aftershocks. How an industry changed. Johnson & Johnson pulled Tylenol from shelves in an unprecedented recall. 31 million bottles swept off counters. An entire product ethos was dismantled overnight. The company's response, swift, public, and expensive, would later be studied as a textbook case of crisis management. But perhaps the most lasting effect wasn't one company's reputation. It was an industry-wide revolution: tamper-evident packaging, triple seals, safety caps, and federal laws that made product tampering a federal crime. A tiny, violent act had rewritten how Americans bought medicine. The cold files and the open wounds. Decades later, the case remains officially unsolved. It lives in the gray. Suspects convicted of related crimes, theories argued by armchair detectives, and families who still have the silence where a loved one should be. The extortionist James William Lewis remains a shadow figure, guilty of trying to cash in on the horror, but not convicted of the poisonings themselves. That unresolved ending is what gnaws at us. We live better because packaging became safer, and yet families still live with questions that time has not answered. The killer, if there was a single killer, walked into anonymity. The pills were small, but the consequences were colossal. A question left on the table. We close on the image we opened with, the pill bottle now sealed tight. The camera lingers on the label, then pulls back to show an empty kitchen. A tick of music. A pause. You've heard the facts. You've felt the fear. The Tylenol murders changed a nation's relationship with trust in the smallest things. But in the end, the most ordinary objects kept their deepest secret. Who did it? We still don't know. An invitation appears, subtle, not exploitative, to remember the victims and to reflect on how fragile trust can be.